Before kings carved laws into stone, before crowns weighed heavy on men's brows, there were only tribes, fire, and hunger was the sharpest weapon of all. For moons, the Dawn River tribe lived on the edge of despair. Their children cried with empty bellies, their elders wasted away in silence, and the forest offered nothing but frost and wolves. Then came the miracle. Hunters staggered back to camp, their shoulders bent beneath a kill so large it seemed the gods themselves had shown mercy. Smoke rose, fires roared, and for the first time in moons, laughter replaced silence. Meat sizzled on stone, marrow boiled in pots, and the tribe's hollow faces glowed with life again. Every bite was a prayer answered, every mouthful a promise that survival was within their grasp. But joy has sharp edges. In the fire's glow, where shadows danced across painted faces, another truth lingered. Salvation hides betrayal well, and envy never stays silent for long. When the first elder fell, lips darkened, eyes glassed with death, silence replaced the laughter. The feast they had believed was a gift became a curse, a banquet poisoned by betrayal. And as fear spread through the camp, one question echoed louder than the storm outside. Who among them had turned survival into murder? Snow buried the valley deeper each night, smothering huts until they looked like graves waiting to be sealed. The wind howled through the ridges like a starving wolf, tearing at hides stretched over wooden frames. Survival felt like a whisper lost in the storm. The river, once alive with fish, lay locked beneath a coffin of ice. The forest, once rich with deer and hares, offered only silence. Even the wolves had grown thin, their cries echoing closer with every passing night. Inside the tribe's huts, fires burned low, smoke curling weakly into the rafters. Children whimpered, their bellies swollen from hunger. Mothers gnawed strips of bark to silence their own emptiness. Elders coughed in the dark, their voices cracked, lips split with cold. Some muttered prayers to spirits who no longer answered, eyes glazed with both faith and despair. Each morning, hunters set out with frost-bitten spears, shoulders bent beneath the weight of hope. They returned with nothing, carrying only silence, their faces hollow as the snow they trudged through. The food pit, once filled with smoked meat and marrow bones, now held only frost and memory. Women scraped the bottom, sucking marrow dust from bones boiled long ago. Dogs too weak to bark lay curled in the corners of huts, ribs sharp as spears beneath their patchy fur. Their whines blended with the wind, a chorus of despair. Around the central fire, the elders sat in silence, faces lined like cracked stone. The chief gripped his staff, jaw tight, but no strength remained in his hollow eyes. "We are not the first to starve," one elder rasped, his voice like breaking ice. The ancestors endured worse. But memory did not fill bellies, and the fire gave no comfort. That night, storms rose again, smothering every hut with new snow. Infants cried into the darkness until exhaustion silenced them. Outside, the wind's laughter mocked their fragility. Among them sat a woman with her son cradled in her lap. She whispered promises she knew were lies, that food would come, that the spirits were watching. The boy's breath was shallow, his lips pale, his small hands clutching her furs. She pressed him close, her own stomach hollow, praying against the silence that pressed in on all sides. The hunger moon gnawed not only at their bodies, but at their bonds. Hunger sharpens suspicion, envy grows in the cold. Families began to measure scraps. Mothers eyed each other's bowls. And though the storm raged outside, a darker storm stirred within. For hunger consumes trust, and even before the feast, betrayal was already awake among them. On the fifth dawn of silence, the valley stirred with a sound no one expected. Shouting not from fear, but from triumph. Through the swirling snow, hunters appeared, staggering beneath the weight of a massive stag. its antlers spread wide like a crown, its body heavy with fat and muscle. The people rushed from their huts, their hollow faces breaking into gasps. Mothers clutched children, elders dragged themselves to the fire circle, eyes wide with disbelief. The hunters collapsed near the flames, their arms trembling from the burden. For a moment, no one breathed. The stag lay before them like a gift from gods long silent. Then the silence broke. Laughter erupted, tears spilled, hands reached skyward in thanks. For the first time in moons, the Dawn River tribe felt hope return. Fires roared higher, fueled by every scrap of wood the people could gather. Smoke curled into the pale sky, carrying prayers with it. Children touched the stag's flank with trembling fingers, as though afraid it would vanish. Elders traced symbols in the air, blessing the hunters for their miracle. Yet beneath the joy, unease lingered. Some hunters exchanged quick glances, eyes clouded with something unspoken, pride mixed with something sharper, secrecy. The chief raised his staff, his voice breaking from both hunger and triumph. Tonight we feast. Tonight the tribe remembers strength. His words thundered across the circle, and the people roared in reply. But in the shadows behind the fire, one pair of eyes did not shine with joy. They watched the stag not with relief, but with calculation. By dusk, the camp was alive with fire. Flames snapped high, casting long shadows across the snow. Smoke curled upward, carrying the scent of roasting meat into the cold night. The stag had been carved with care, its meat divided among families, its marrow bones cracked open to boil in stone pots. The tribe's hunger had become a frenzy of preparation. Children's laughter returned, thin at first, then louder. They danced near the flames, their hollow cheeks glowing with firelight. For a moment, their cries were forgotten. Mothers wept as they tasted broth, tears streaming down their cracked cheeks. The taste was bitter, smoky, but it was food. Salvation poured into empty bellies. Elders raised their hands toward the sky, voices trembling with prayers. They named ancestors aloud, thanking them for guiding the hunters' spears. The chief sat at the fire's heart, his staff resting at his side. He dipped the first piece of meat into his bowl, chewed slowly, then nodded. The feast had begun. Songs rose, low at first, then swelling into chants that echoed through the valley. Feet stamped, hands clapped, the rhythm of life beating back the silence of hunger. Yet among the joy, whispers grew. "Why now?" someone muttered. "Why, after moons of nothing, do the spirits suddenly give us plenty?" Faces glanced sideways, some with envy, some with doubt. The fire's light revealed joy, but the shadows carried unease. And in those shadows, envy sharpened its teeth, waiting for the moment to strike. The fire burned high, the meat sizzled, the marrow boiled thick and rich. The tribe ate as though they had never tasted life before. For a time, only the sound of chewing, laughter, and the crack of bones filled the night. Smoke clung heavy in the air, glowing orange beneath the stars. Then it happened. One elder coughed, the sound rough, deeper than hunger's rasp. His hand trembled as he clutched his chest, his bowl spilling into the snow. Gasps rippled through the circle. The old man's lips darkened, his eyes rolled white. He collapsed into the firelight, motionless. At first, silence. Then a voice cried out, "The spirits claim him." Another muttered, "The feast was cursed." The chief rose, staff in hand, his face tight. He was old, he said, but the words rang hollow. Before they could breathe again, another elder groaned. She fell sideways, her bowl scattering meat, her lips already blackened. Panic surged. Mothers pulled children close. Hunters dropped their bowls, eyes darting to the meat, the fire, the hunters who had brought it. The laughter that had filled the night dissolved into whispers of fear. Joy curdled into suspicion, thick as the smoke. And somewhere in the crowd, A single word hissed like a spark on dry grass. Poison. The fire still burned, but no one touched the meat. Bowls lay overturned in the snow, steam rising from what had once been salvation. Families huddled together, eyes darting between the fallen elders and the hunters who had carried the stag. The silence was heavier than the storm outside. Then the whispers began, soft at first, sharp as flint. It was the hunters. They ate before us. They brought this curse. One hunter leapt to his feet, his voice breaking. We bled for this meat. Do you think we would poison our own kin? But the tribe had already turned. Envy and fear swirled together, tightening into anger. Fingers pointed, voices rose. The chief struck his staff against the ground. Silence! He roared, but even his command could not cut through the storm of suspicion. Women clutched their children tighter, their eyes wide with terror. Warriors shifted uneasily, torn between defending the hunters and joining the crowd. Another voice shouted, "It is not the hunters, it is her!" A trembling hand pointed at a woman who had stirred the stew. Her face went pale, her mouth opening in protest, but the word had already spread. Poisoner? Witch? Betrayer? The tribe closed in, their whispers louder than the crack of fire. Fear had chosen its prey, and betrayal had found its voice. The tribe gathered in a wide circle around the great fire. Shadows danced on painted faces, and every eye burned with fear. One by one, the accused were dragged into the light. A woman who stirred the pot, a hunter who cut the stag, a boy who carried the marrow bones. Each protested, their voices trembling. I would never harm the tribe. I bled for this hunt. But the circle listened with cold suspicion. The chief's staff struck the earth, echoing like thunder. The spirits demand truth, he said, but his gaze wavered. The accused knelt, their breath misting in the cold air. Mothers wept in the shadows while children clung to their skirts. The first hunter raised his hands. I ate the same meat, look at me, I live. But his words fell like ash into silence. An elder pointed to the pot where the fallen had eaten first. It was not the meat, it was the stew. Someone chose who would die. The fire crackled louder, throwing sparks into the night. Every face turned, not with relief, but with deeper suspicion. The circle had not found truth, it had only widened the shadows. The fire hissed, sending sparks spiraling into the night. The circle held its breath, every eye waiting for a name. The chief's voice broke the silence. Who dares poison their own kin? Step forward or be dragged by the spirits themselves. No one moved. Only the crackle of fire and the low whimper of a child broke the stillness. Then a woman's voice rang out, sharp as bone snapping. It was not the hunters, it was the pot. And who guards the pots but the chief's own son? Gasps tore through the circle. All eyes turned. The young man froze, his face pale, his lips trembling with unspoken denial. He stammered, "Lies! I am the son of the chief. I would never—" But his voice cracked and his eyes betrayed him. The hunters stepped closer, their hands gripping spears. The tribe's whispers grew into shouts, a storm rising against him. The chief's staff shook in his hands. His gaze lingered on his son, and in that silence, truth became heavier than loyalty. It was never the hunters. The voice of the betrayed rose again. It was him. He fed his envy with our blood. The circle roared. The true poisoner stood revealed, not an outcast, but one of power. The circle shook with voices, anger rising louder than the storm outside. Some demanded blood, others pleaded for mercy. "Kill him!" one hunter shouted, his spear raised. Only death can wash poison from the tribe, but an elder's cracked voice cut through. "Spill kin's blood, and the spirits will curse us. Exile him, let the cold decide." The chief stood frozen, torn between blood and bloodline. His son's eyes pleaded, but the weight of betrayal pressed harder. Mothers shielded their children, whispering prayers. Warriors argued, their fists clenched, ready to turn their fury on each other. The accused trembled, his hands bound, his face wet with sweat and snow. "I did it for us," he cried. "A leader must endure while others weaken." The tribe spat at his words. Some saw madness, others saw truth twisted into venom. The chief struck his staff into the earth. "Enough!" His voice shook. "The tribe will decide, not me." And so the circle stood divided, the fire between them burning like a wound that would never heal. By dawn, the fires had burned low. The meat lay untouched, blackened where it had fallen into the snow. Families retreated into their huts, silence pressing heavier than hunger. No laughter, no songs, only the crack of ice in the river. Children remembered not the taste of food, but the sight of elders collapsing, lips darkened, eyes glassed in death. The hunters sharpened their spears in silence, their pride hollowed. They had brought life, yet the feast had turned into a curse. Mothers whispered to their children, warning them of envy, of poison, of trust broken by blood. Their words carried fear, not comfort. The accused was gone, cast into the storm, bound only by his own breath. But the wound he left behind bled through the tribe. The chief sat alone, his staff across his knees, his eyes empty. He had lost not only his son, but the tribe's trust. And though the fires still smoked, their warmth no longer reached the people. The feast had ended, but the shadows remained,